All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to ASCILITElive webinars series for 2024. This is the second one of the year, and I'm very pleased to have our colleagues from University of Southern Queensland with us. And most importantly, they are the 2023 ASCILITE Innovation Award winners. So we have Dr. Lauren Hamby, Dr. Tricia Paul, and Mr. Alex Chacha here. So what they are going to share with us is, I'm really excited to learn how the reaction toolbar has transformed online student feedback using emojis, mirroring social media interactions for immediate student reactions. And I think this is quite timely when online education is unavoidable amid global pandemic in those 3 years. So it seems like we have a cozy group to start with, and maybe our colleagues will join us later on. So I will just admit people to join in the session when they are in the waiting room. For the participants, just to let you know, the webinar is being recorded, so feel free to turn off your camera if you don't feel comfortable to, and feel free to use the chat function if you don't want your voice to be recorded. So now I will hand over to Tricia to do the acknowledgement of the country, and for all three presenters to introduce themselves and start the presentation. So over to you, Tricia.
Thank you. Thank you, Kong Nui. That was a lovely introduction. So welcome, everybody. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge the First Nations of the lands in which we are on today, and their ongoing connection to country, lands and waterways. Further, we recognise the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first educators and researchers of Australia. We pay deep respect to elders past and present. And today I'm joining you from Guyabal country, which is Toowoomba, the top of the Toowoomba mountain. Lauren and Alex, also joining me from Toowoomba, the same campus.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Dr. Lauren Humby. I'm a criminologist, which is why I have the painting of a knife behind me. It's not a threat. So I teach crime and justice, victimology and juvenile justice here at USQ. I'm very passionate about learning and teaching. I've been here for 3 years full time, but prior to that I was here 2 years as a casual, and that's when I first met Tricia. And so much of my knowledge about learning and teaching and pedagogy has come from her. I didn't even know what the term pedagogy meant when I first started. And it has developed into a real passion for me. And we've developed this awesome team where we get together and create and make things a little bit better for students. So this tool kind of started as a, hey, wouldn't it be great? Alex and his team had already had the thought. But one of the difficulties that we often have in academia is that there's a bit of a disconnect between academics and professionals. And the wonderful thing about our team is that we're kind of everybody.
We're everybody. We've got the academic and Lauren. I'm a third space academic, and then we have Alex and his team, and they're professionals and amazing at what they do. And so we have the ideas and they help us realize these ideas. And as Lauren said, this one started as like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could? And then Alex is like, you know what? Our team's been thinking about something similar to that. And the conversation started and things went really well. So let's have a look at this tool.
So as I mentioned, so when I first came to USQ, I was fresh out of a PhD pretty much. And, you know, that taught me all about research, but it really didn't teach me about teaching. It is something that I would say that I'm fairly natural at. I do come from a line of teachers, and I do remember my mum getting me to help her mark when I was at university. So she was only marking like year 1 and year 2, so it's all good. She wasn't a university lecturer. But one of the things I noticed was that it was so, I mean, boring, I suppose. You know, we really rely on the lecture capture tools and the digitization of texts. I actually came from an online education space. So I, from the age of 13, I was either distance or online. I did my secondary school online. I did my undergrad and my postgrad. So I had a fairly good understanding of what worked and what didn't work. And so I wanted to kind of model after and not necessarily copy, but mimic what worked, what I found worked as a student. The issue that I came across was that I have wonderful ideas, just ask me, but I try and put too many in. And, you know, some things work for some cohorts and some things don't. And the mid-semester surveys and the end-of-semester surveys, as many of you will know, can be complicated. They provide very generic data. It's not very specific, and they can often be really negative. Like it takes the students, if a student is upset or disgruntled with a course, they're far more likely to fill out the my opinion mid-semester surveys. But it is actually, and it's difficult to get them to do it. So we discussed having, I think it started really with wouldn't it be cool if we want a social media, we want to kind of do a like and a dislike. And as somebody who is not on social media, that's fairly ironic, but it was this idea that I could get, or educators could get specific feedback on different content, which could influence decisions in the future. But also now, one of the other difficulties with the mid-semester and end of semester is that there's not really much opportunity to close the feedback loop. And, you know, we were just discussing this morning, you know, it's all, if somebody come up to you and said like, oh, give us feedback so that teachers who are coming after you can be better, I'd go, well, they can work it out themselves. You know, like it's kind of, but if you entice me to, you know, if I give feedback, this can help me become a better teacher, then I'm much more likely to participate in that. The other difficulty that we had, so, you know, we had so many EdTech tools available, which helped, like COVID helped with that. And we've got a lot of people around the university. You hear of so many as a teacher, like, oh my goodness. And everybody's got their favorite. And really what we didn't know was how students, like I heard what educators loved and which tools worked for them. But when I asked, how do the students use it or how do the students react? They kind of were like, I don't really know. So, you know, we know from the reaction toolbar now that students love videos and they love the discussion boxes that we embed. The other difficult thing that we had was engaging online students. How do you engage them? How do you keep them engaged, particularly those who were like me? So I wasn't necessarily someone who came to every class. I wasn't necessarily somebody that was on top of the lecturer asking, you know, all these questions, but I was certainly engaged. I was just doing my own thing. So how do we track students that Moodle may say, oh, they're, you know, like they're doing the content or whatever? So how do we track those people and know whether they're engaged or disengaged? So that was the problem in a nutshell. Anything that you guys want to add?
I guess it's around those ed tech tools you talked about as well. It's like, you know, I have my favorite thing, you have your favorite thing, lecturer over there has theirs, and then the ed designers have theirs, and each ed designer is different. And it's figuring out, well, we as the teachers like all these different things, but which ones are effective for the students, and how do we find that out? Because like you said, Lauren, those mid-semester and semester surveys, they don't really tell us that, yes, this is a good video, or we like this format of learning, or no, we didn't like that activity, or there's a problem, this podcast won't play for me, or whatever it is, because those surveys are kind of decontextualized. And so one of the problems was like, we don't know what is actually working, what the students want. And we want the feedback when they're experiencing the good or the bad. That's what we really wanted to do. So that's where Lauren's idea around, well, what if we could get them to like something or dislike something or give us some feedback? So that leads us to the solution, I think.
It does.
Nice.
The solution that we developed was the reaction toolbar. So as you can see, it's a small slimline. What do you call it, Alex? Fancy thing is not the.
We just call it a bar. Yeah.
A bar.
Yeah.
A slimline bar.
Yeah.
And there was we really did kind of think fairly critically around what we actually wanted to ask students. And we came up with, did you find this useful? Because we didn't really want to ask them whether they were engaged, because they might not have been engaged, but it was still useful to the course. And some things in life, as we all know, are boring, but they have to be done. So and we find them useful. We get something out of it. So that was a key thing that that took us time, and we've developed it. It went through pilot stage, which we will talk about. So as you can see, the students can give a thumbs up and it turns yellow. When they do that, they can give a thumbs down, or they can leave feedback. They can change their feedback at any time. And this helps, with the feedback loop. For example, I had an audio clip that had an error, and I had a bunch of people dislike the activity, and they commented that the audio clip was malfunctioning. I fixed it. They changed their dislike to a like button, and we can see all of that. Alex's team and his wonderful numbers people. I teach crime because I don't do numbers.
Oh, but yeah, so the students, like Lauren said, they can update their feedback at any time. Note that while the images at the bottom here is only showing one of those things highlighted at a time, they can actually have liked something and provided feedback at the same time. So two things will be highlighted. We're just trying to show here just quickly how it might look. And students can go in and update their feedback. So it retains, I don't know, some magic wizardry in the background, thanks to Alex and the team, retains their comment. And so they can go up and update their comment and make it more relevant. So like Lauren said, she found there was a problem with an audio file. She can go back and say, oh, okay, so thank you for the feedback. I've fixed that. Can you go and check it? And then they can go back in and check it, and then they can change it to a like and remove the feedback that they had there about it being not playing or something like that. So it's a really nice way for students to feel like they can engage and they can actually give feedback that is responded to.
One thing I would like to talk about on the design, because the designers put a lot of effort into making this look as not ed tech as possible. We wanted it to be as subtle as possible. One of the things we were talking about earlier that Trish and Lauren alluded to was about how there is so much ed tech. What we were trying to do is we didn't want the student to try to learn how to use something new, which is one of the reasons why we tried to make it look like what a student would be used to on social media. And so a lot of effort goes into making it not noticeable. It's actually harder to make something not noticeable than noticeable. And that was because we didn't want to distract from the content that they're talking about. If a student chooses not to engage in this, then that's okay. They won't be, blasted in the face constantly with this, we want your opinion, we want your opinion. It's just there if they choose to do it. And I think that increases the quality of the feedback as well, because it means that people who are providing the feedback actually want to do it, and they don't have to learn how to go about that. It just looks like what we're sort of used to the internet looking like these days.
Absolutely. So we created a video for the students because this was a new tool and they didn't know how to use it. We created a video that is put on our study desk, and we thought that we'd show you that now to give you a bit more of an understanding of how this works in practice. As long as it works.
On your study desk, you will find materials and activities delivered in different modes: written, audio, and visual to meet your individual learning needs. We all learn differently, and it's important for you and your lecturers to understand how you learn best so we can improve your learning experiences and outcomes. Below many learning items, you will see a reaction bar asking you whether you found the item useful. If you did, you can give it a thumbs up or give it a thumbs down if you didn't. To provide further feedback about what you liked or how we can improve, click on the speech bubble. We hope you enjoy your studies.
I think the one thing that's missing from that particular video to reassure students is the fact that everything is anonymous. So we can't see who actually left the feedback. It's only if they put their name there that we actually know what they said. And that is a piece of feedback that we've given to the video creation. So yeah, but I think it's a really important piece that students need to know that whatever feedback they're giving, we can't tell who said what unless they write something that's identifiable. And I'm pretty sure, Lauren, when you start your courses every trimester, you're upfront about it and you tell your students that it's like, we don't know who said this. So if you're wanting a really specific piece of feedback for you, you probably need to email us or put it in a discussion forum where I do know that that's from you.
Yeah,
yeah,
that was something that I did have to make specific because in the first iteration, I had students who like expected me to know who they were, and I couldn't close the feedback loop, and I had to kind of go to class and be like, you have to email me specifically because this is anonymous. And it was good because they did end up saying, oh, that's great. I'm actually, I didn't realize that. And that was part of our learning as much of the students as well. One thing we have noticed is that the courses with this video seem to be
a higher usage from the students.
They've got a high usage. Yeah, there's an understanding of why it's there. But one thing we were talking about this morning is that it is important that educators actually address the feedback. Because like anything, if we don't close that loop, then the students are less likely to use it. They go, well, why would I bother giving feedback? Because nothing happens. So that it's a really important step for educators to understand there, because without that, the students are just going to decline their usage. So
I'll just jump in there, Lauren, because that's a really important point. One of the things that this is now used across a number of different courses, and there's a big difference when it's just put in a course and no instruction is given to students and nothing's done with it, compared to when it's talked about up front. We have this video and the academic says, hey, we've got this in there so that we can talk to, and then when they do get feedback, because I'm sure, Lauren, you check at least every week, if not a couple times a week, to see what your feedback is, and you address it immediately, whether that's in class or via a online post to a forum or something like that. You address the feedback, so that is closing that loop. So the students see the value of that, and comparing that to the mid-semester and end-of-semester surveys where they go, oh, well, the feedback I give just helps the next people, it doesn't help me. Whereas here, they can see and they can experience their feedback being addressed and being used in a productive way within the course that they're actually in, so it supports them to build a better experience, really, better learning experience.
Absolutely. So this is part A. This is all that what the students see and what I use. But we've got the behind the scenes, and this is where Alex really comes in and his team shines. So how educators use it. Do you want to take over, Alex? You will say this far more succinctly and
sounds like wishful thinking to me. So one of the things that the team and I do is that we build these resources to try and make course development easier. And the reaction bar is one of our styles and one of the ones we like the most. And so one of the things we realized was that we wanted to make sure that because there is so much ed tech out there and there is so many ways that courses can be built and resources could be built, we wanted to make it so that the resources were available when and where they're needed the most. And so because of that, what we developed was we have in Moodle, in our Moodle instance at USQ, we have just a button that exists in the editor and it loads up what we call a toolbox. And that toolbox has our In total, I think we're up to about 18 resources. And the educator could just go through and select the reaction bar, and it will sort of step you through the process where you have to give it a name, explain what kind of resource it is to help with reporting, and then hit insert. Oh, there you go. So here, this is our configuration page for the reaction bar, which allows you to give it a title, which needs to be easy to recognize when you're looking at a report, because you can't just make them all video 1, video 2, video 3, because when you're looking at a report, you don't know what video 1, 2, and 3 is.
I learned that the hard way the first time.
Yep, so did we. And so because of feedback from Lauren and others, we now break it down. So it's not just what kind of resource it is, but where is that resource from? So it's a video. These can be from YouTube, or you can select one of the other platforms that we use here at the university. And then when you're ready, you just click insert and it will embed it directly into content for you. Our developers are very clever, and they've been able to make it so it can recognize the content that precedes it and make sure that the bar actually clicks right up against it. So it's very clear from the context where the reaction bar, or what piece of content the reaction bar belongs to.
And as you can, I was going to say, as you can see in that image there, it's really smooth. So what Alex was just saying about it's really butted up against it. It doesn't look like an add-on like a lot of different ed tech tools do. It just looks like part of the experience, which I think is a really smooth and clean way to make it work, which I think supports the students actually engaging with it, because they're not like, oh, here's another thing I have to do. It's like, oh, it's part of this, it's part of the experience.
And that's key for the educators as well. Like, as you can see going back, adding a title, selecting the object, and that can be video, H5P, image, text, variety, and then the subtype. You can select anything as well, really, or like a wide variety of things, and then click insert. Because the way we started, we were putting in code. And so, I learned a lot. I'd never coded before. And so there was a lot of emails going, help, I don't know what I broke. But as you can imagine, any academic who might be listening is going, hell no, I'm not doing, like that's a lot of work. So one thing that we really focused on was making it really simple for the academic to just add the reaction bar in a couple of seconds for it to be embedded, and then you can get feedback. So in addition to the reaction bar, we've got a reaction bar report. No use in having something if you can't look at the data. Alex, do you want to take this away? Because you know this baby like no one
Sure.
else.
So one of the joys of it being a product that's in-house means that we're able to sort of look at how it's used across our entire university, and then provide feedback based on the context of the university. So some of the things that we're able to do is we're able to see how often a reaction bar has been embedded across the uni, and then give educators an idea of what the average is, which is really important, because we found that some courses will use a resource 120 times, and then other courses might only use it once. And by looking at the data and seeing what engagement is like, it starts to help us understand what the goal is. And if that average should go up or down. In other words, if we should ask Lauren to add more or remove some, just to try and figure out what the best engagement is. And we're also able to see how many people have interacted with it, which is really helpful, because it's one thing to offer this, but it's another one if you only have one person that gives you 200 pieces of feedback versus 200 students giving you one piece of feedback. It changes what you're doing and how it's being used. As it was said earlier, that we don't provide the student IDs to anybody. We do have them logged in for security reasons, but it allows us to sort of see, as is shown at the top of this report, how many students we have, and dig down deeper and start to see some usage patterns, which are really, really helpful. And then this is where we can sort of see that it's where breaking things down and giving them names can be really, really helpful. We still allow it if you don't have a name. Like as you can see here, this is a couple of our other reports, but it's all very similar data. We have inline discussion, and even though it didn't have a name, it's now 9, 10, 11, and 12, which is great if you're looking at a report, but not so helpful if you're trying to remember what your 9th, 10th, and 11th one was.
The great thing about that though now is that if you click on the arrow, it does actually take you to that page, and I can go, oh, that's right, that's that's that related discussion. So it is actually easy to find. That was just one of our little kind of, when I initially named these, we didn't really realize that it would be good if they had different names and not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The other thing I think is probably worth mentioning while you've got these ones open is that because it's so these are two of our other resources, a podcast player and an inline discussion. What we can look at is we can see if there's a correlation between the number of, say, messages that get sent and the amount of feedback that gets given. So instead of the feedback kind of being a bit blind, we can actually go and see how the resource that's getting the feedback is being used. And one thing that I'm really curious to see is at some point, do we start to notice that discussions that have a lot of engagement, do they get more positive feedback, or do they get more negative because maybe the conversation takes a weird turn? Just those kind of things, I think, make it really interesting to notice, again, what patterns could be beneficial to other academics and other courses and future courses that Lauren and Trish might be involved in.
And one thing that is really valuable that I want to point out here, so the Social Theories of Crime is a podcast that I created myself. I don't do lectures, so I do mini chunks. And so that resource, that resource is currently 7 minutes long. Now, as you can see from this data, it actually shows that not one student completed listening to that podcast. So for me, that tells me that, okay, either it's really boring or they're not getting to the end. So I really need to have a look at this resource and perhaps shorten it again. Or one thing that I'm looking at doing is bringing other criminologists in so we can actually have a discussion. So it's not just my one voice talking at them for 7 minutes.
Also interesting. It's also interesting to see the average playback speed is 1.2.
Yes.
That might mean that Lauren speaks more slowly in podcasts, or maybe she could speak a touch, Lauren, a touch
Yeah, I know,
faster, which would reduce the time, because 7 minutes down by a little bit might make it 6 minutes or 5 minutes, 5.5.
And it's something I'm so aware of, that I do speak fast. So I tend to try and slow down, and maybe it's just like really frustrating to them right now.
But it's a good data. It's good that we've got baseline data and that we can then use that to, are we allowed to experiment? Experiment.
Yeah.
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 Cool.
Now, so this is the instant feedback that you've got. And I've shown here what the drop down arrow also shows. So the police legitimacy video that I got a colleague to produce is in module 4. And if I click that link, it'll take me straight to it.
One of the things that we find really exciting about this data and being able to do this is that it's not just about across the course, the way the mid and end teaching period survey data is the fact that we can drill down and start to see exactly per resource, and sometimes multiple resources per page, how they're being looked at and what they're being considered. It's nice to get a 37 up, 4 down at the very top, because that gives you an idea of like, hey, the students are pretty happy. That's awesome, doing really well. But then be able to drill down and see how it goes. One of the things that's been really beneficial for is that we've seen that for some courses we might find, say, podcasts, for example, students are really happy to listen to podcasts in the first few weeks, and then maybe they start to become less interested as they go on. And the fact that we can see that between sort of the completion rate and plays, and then as well as the feedback for those resources, it really helps give some evidence to make sure that the educators are able to not overdo a certain kind of resource or underdo a certain kind of resource, and be much more responsive to what the students are actually doing, not just what they're saying.
And it's really important for learning activities in particular. So now that I've had the reaction bar for over 3 iterations of the one course, I can have a look at past data and I can see a pattern. And I've actually removed some learning activities. This is one that's clearly, ones that are clearly not being used, or that have had negative feedback across multiple years. And that's been really helpful for me. And I really feel, and I've had student feedback also says that, you know, this course has been carefully considered and developed. And that's the kind of feedback that I get at the end of the semester. And it's because of my ability to go, okay, so students aren't reacting, they aren't responding to this, they aren't engaging in this, they don't find it useful. So why is it there? It doesn't need to be. And I might think it's as cool as anything, you know, like that's often why I put stuff off. How interesting is this? And they're like, this is boring, Lauren, you know. So
and they have the freedom to say that with your reaction bar, and they know that it's anonymous, and they do.
Yeah. And you know, and that's and I think as an academic, it's really easy. I think we can quite easily forget how much more advanced we are. You know, I mean, many of us suffer imposter syndrome, and you know, it's something that we find cool or that we'll understand may not necessarily come through to students in their first year. It might be something that they might need to wait for their second or third year. But also we're different, you know, like I'm a different generation. So I found that out now, you know, students go, oh, I wasn't, you know, we were talking about something that happening in 2003 or 4, and one student popped their hand, I wasn't born yet. I thought, yeah, okay, can you please leave my class? I didn't say that, just to be clear. But I have started to notice, and when my teachers used to tell me that, I used to think, oh yeah, whatever. But it's so true. So the pilot that we had in 2022 and 2023. We did a comparison in the reaction toolbar versus the traditional student surveys. So as you can see, the reaction toolbar, there was a lot more engagement. So in the end of semester, my opinion survey, there were 15 students who left feedback out of a possible 46. So there was 46 in my course in total. And there was 22 who responded to the reaction toolbar. In 2023, the numbers were more significant. There was 7 who responded, which is, I must admit, a more kind of average number. 7 to 8 is quite normal for me, for my courses and across criminology. Yet for the reaction toolbar, we got 18 responses.
No, that was 18 individual student responses who may have responded multiple times over the course of course.
Correct.
The course.
Yes. Thank you for specifying that. I want to go back. Well, we're not anymore. So
go back. Press the back arrow or something.
There we go.
Yeah, so just keep in mind, these end counts are individual students, but the reaction toolbar ones means that they've responded at least once. They may have responded 20 times.
Yeah.
And so I think that is an important difference as well between these, because students who respond once and see that their feedback has been listened to are more likely to respond again, or at least that's what we've found.
Absolutely. And we do know that students respond, like the student responses are pretty amazing. After this pilot that we did in Crime and Justice, we managed amazingly or Alex and his team, a university-wide implementation in 2024. And we had a little bit of a look at the statistics and what we've got in crime and justice already. So we're in week 7 for trimester. So there is a bit of a difference. When we did the pilot, we were in semesters, and we've now gone to a trimester model. So trimester is a little bit shorter. We're currently in week 8. But the My Opinion survey university-wide, which is, you know, we've got a really big yellow button and there's a marketing email and it's everywhere on the study desk that goes, take us, and, you know, we want your opinion. So university-wide, there was a 12% student response. In Crime and Justice, in week 7, there was a 13% response. So while it's not a significant difference. The fact that we haven't, we don't shove it down students' throats makes them a whole lot happier, let me tell you, because students get really frustrated with that. And the more that you tell them to fill out a survey, like there's so much research out there that says that students are over surveyed and they're sick of it, and they push back. It's too, don't have the time, they're doing assessments, whatever. But the difference with the reaction toolbar is that we can have really specific feedback on what's good, what's not, about certain activities. The other thing that I have noticed anecdotally is that the reaction toolbar is actually a lot more positive. So my opinion typically gets students who are a bit more negative, like think of yourself. If you have a bad experience, you're likely to go on Google and review it. Tell everybody else to avoid this place. It's our retribution as a society. But it's far harder to get students who have a positive experience to fill out the my opinion. Whereas the reaction toolbar, it's overwhelmingly like it's so good for your ego. Like students love it. It's like, I'm awesome. So it's a really good thing. The other thing to note is that, the data, we typically do see a higher response rate in mid-semester. So it will be interesting to compare end of semester reviews, both with the traditional survey and the reaction bar. And we look forward to seeing that data. Is there anything else that you want to add?
No, I just think it's pretty cool that you get more student engagement through the toolbar than we do through.
And I think that to sort of go back to what we were talking about earlier, that's a sort of testament to the very careful design and development that's gone into it to make it look like it's just a natural part of their environment, not another tool to learn. Because every time somebody has to learn a new tool, no matter how beneficial it might be, it's another roadblock to them using that tool. And so a lot of effort goes into just ensuring that it sits perfectly within context of our courses, within our LMS, within our university. So that way there is no barrier between giving feedback and not giving feedback. Whereas even my opinion, it is a new tool that needs to be learned how to be used. It might just be a form, but it's a form that still needs to be understood. Whereas thumbs up, thumbs down, and a comment is what most students, most of us have already learned from just general internet visual language. And I think that's been a really big benefit for us and why we see such high engagement.
Absolutely. So in 2023, during our pilot period, we had 28 courses that embedded the toolbar in the entire year and 120 students who provided feedback. I did think you did tell me how much feedback there was, but I don't think I put that in here. I'm sorry, Alex.
I don't think you did.
Do you remember?
Hang on. No, don't have it here. We looked at other numbers.
So
okay.
I can tell you, though, that the 120 students, there wasn't just 120 reactions. It was a hell of a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Now, in 2024, so we're only, March? 13th of March. And already so far, we have 33 courses that have embedded the toolbar and 69 students have provided feedback. So this is really exciting for us. We really hope that we can smash that 120 and more students will, and as students kind of get to know what this is and how to use it and how it can benefit them, which is a really important aspect that we need to impart on educators to say that, for more students to use this, they have to see the benefit. But that's really encouraging, very encouraging for us. So where to now? So we got the university-wide implementation. So we'd really like to do a survey of UniSQ staff who have used the reaction bar. So to know how they use it and how it's helpful. And we also, the other projects that we've spoken about quite a lot is the importance of time and space in delivering online education. This project certainly has shown that, you know, I mean, for a long time, an example is that the understanding has been students just won't use forums. They just won't discuss with each other. They just won't engage. We know that that's actually not true. It's all about the location and so the time and space that you ask students to engage, to discuss with one another. Because I can tell you that in my course, they go ballistic, crime and justice. They discuss and they engage and they love it. And they can be in module 6 and they're still discussing something from module 3, which is awesome to see. It really does mean that they're engaging with the course and the content. And they're also going outside it, you know, like I live under a rock a lot of the time. I'm not on social media. So I love the fact that my students say, you know, oh, there's this awesome documentary, or here's this podcast, and they recommend it to their peers, but they're recommending it to me too. And I often put, like they'll often comment and say, oh, this would be a really cool resource that highlights this theory or highlights this. And I go, thank you very much. I'm going to embed that in my course. And I just think that that's fantastic. It makes my job easy, or easier. What's it easy? Easier. But it also, I know that my students are engaging, but they're also positive, you know, like when they successfully say, and I've actually not had a student be wrong so far when they say this resource would be really good here. And that's them applying their knowledge. And I couldn't be happier than that.
That's what we want. We want students thinking right here. So I'm in the middle of this module and this content, and hey, I read that over there. That would work here too. That's them going outside of their course, putting it in the real world and making those connections that are really authentic. And, you know, with generative AI and all those conversations going on, they've been going on for years, actually, about any new whiz-bang edtech thing. It's always about how do we make it real for students. And when you see the students actually making those connections, or giving the feedback, like I don't like this resource, there's a better one over there, I saw it yesterday. Because it was released the day before, you know, that helps us understand what is actually working for students. And when we have the opportunity to get that immediate feedback and respond to it and like acknowledge them, as Lauren said, she's like, thank you, this is great. And then she can update it, but it shows that we listen and that she's listening and that she's closing that loop, and then she's continually improving the course for the future iterations. I mean, that idea of understanding the importance of responding to student feedback, to responding to student discussions in the time and place where they're having those, rather than sending them 7 clicks over that way to go discuss that thing here, but you don't remember that really specific word that we use in criminology or whatever your discipline is. And then students will give up. So being in the time and the space where I'm talking about this thing is huge.
And that's so important with the reaction bar itself. You know, like students are able to, you know, if they're happy and they've engaged and they found the resource useful, they're able to let you know just then and there. Yep. They don't have to go off, or they don't have to remember it, write it down, send you an email. And, you know, emails are hard to send. Like, I just think you have to think as a grown-up and, you know, write professionally. And
do you though, Lauren? Do you?
It depends who you're writing the email to.
Exactly. But, you know, an email is also not anonymous. Yeah. And so if students are like, well, I actually found this really hard to understand and comprehend, Lauren, this social theory of crime that you've just presented to me, I don't get it. Yeah. How do I say that without me looking like some idiot that shouldn't be in the course? You know, so having that reaction bar there with the feedback and the comment, I can write that and know, and if Lauren set me up properly and let me know that it's all anonymous and all that, if she's done that work at the beginning, I know that I can provide that feedback without feeling dumb or stupid or anything like that. But that will give Lauren an opportunity to go, oh, I didn't explain it as well as I thought I did. Let me try again. And that will be closing that loop.
And that has been such a key thing for me to learn, you know, to really scaffold, to really go back to the beginning. I teach a first semester course for a lot of students. Like, they can take it anytime in the first year, but for those who who are just out of high school or who are coming back to study, it is really important, and I have had that feedback. And if I have it from multiple students, I then go, okay, that resource, I need to reframe that. And you really do, this tool really allows you to learn about who you are as a teacher, who you are almost as a person as well, and to better prepare yourself and your materials so that your students can engage with it. So that is if my computer responds to me. So we do have one publication in 2022. Thanks for the feedback. We have another one currently underway in relation to time and space. So hopefully you will see that very, very shortly. But for now, are there any questions?
There's something in the chat. It's a long one. Have you thought about adding a reward response to the tool, like stars popping up when a student clicks on the reaction button? This is for you, Alex.
Yeah.
This is all you.
So one of the things that we realized really early on is that it sounds odd, but if it's too rewarding, then that means that these students are giving feedback because they want the reward, not because they want the feedback to come through, which our concern was that it could make it a little bit less engaging. That being said, we do have other products where we actually do add those little bits of delight, is kind of what we think of them as, where if it's more about the student doing something and achieving something for themselves, then yeah, we kind of have these little things, like we've got little, something we're working on at the moment where our designers made these little emojis, and they kind of animate depending on when you click them and what they do, and hover over them, and hearts grow and things like that. But for this one in particular, we want to be a little bit careful because we didn't want to have numbers that were really high just because it's really fun to click the button.
Means you don't want to go like this all the time. Let's see if it'll do. Because look.
Yeah, that thing. Yeah.
That thing. Sorry. I'm surprised it hasn't happened to me yet. It usually does.
One thing I will actually add to that is that you mentioned, like, you know, it might seem gimmicky, but you've got students request this feature when it happens in Canvas. Gimmicky is such a funny thing, is because I think, again, delight makes a difference. We know that when a system that's been designed is enjoyable, it will be used more. So I actually think those little moments aren't, you know, they can seem gimmicky on the surface and like, is it really important? I actually think, yeah, those kind of little moments are incredibly important because it will keep the users coming back. And I think if you can add that anywhere throughout a course with your students, I think that's a good thing because it'll keep them engaged. And yeah, any little reward, delightful reward you can give them, I think is always beneficial. We even have some courses where, or like in Moodle books, which is where you sort of click through pages. We have some courses that have a little, congratulations, you finished, you know, the section at the end of the book, just because it just adds that little bit of delight, and it acknowledges that they've done something that they didn't necessarily have to.
Yeah, we just need to be careful, as you were saying before, Alex, be careful about what we're putting those little bits on. Because if we put it on, particularly the reaction bar, I think it will just encourage students to do it to get the reward, not to give necessarily the feedback, as you're saying. So it's again, it's a time and place thing. It's about understanding, well, having a congratulations, you've done the book is really cool. And that's a really nice thing. Or, yeah, you've submitted your assignment. I actually like that idea. Encouraging students to submit by when they submit, it goes, yay, congratulations.
If they submit on time, then they get really big celebration.
It's a little late, something cranky, a little emoji gets cranky at them.
No, Alex, but hey, that's an idea for your team. Is there anything we can do around that submit button? Alex, this one is for you.
It's not the first time we've heard that.
No, we've ideally, what we sort of love the idea is, I just love the idea of making all these open source and making it available to absolutely everybody for, you know, no charge, no cost. We talked about that internally a little bit, actually, about what would be needed to make it completely open source. But we're sort of so early in the stage of things that we are working on just getting it adopted and used and appreciated internally. And then hopefully at some point, once it becomes the norm, it is something that we could start to share with others for in whatever way that our higher ups will allow us to do so. But for now, it's so integrated into our system that to make it sort of universal will be a bit tricky. Not impossible by any means. It just means that we'll have to, yeah, a bit of play and a bit of experimentation. But yeah, one day I would like to just make this open source for everybody. The universities like money, so I don't know if they'll, let us do that, but we can only hope.
Okay, thank you very much, Lauren, Tricia, and Alex. Any further questions or comments from the floor? I just have a last, very just out of curiosity from myself. So I can understand the pros and cons of having an anonymous response from the students. So how are we going to harvest those who definitely don't want to engage then? Because the anonymous means that there could be the same students be giving the feedback, wanting the feedback again and again. So how are we going to know who haven't actually done that in the class?
I can talk about that from a technical point of view. So on my end, I can absolutely see who the students are, but for the sake of privacy, we don't make those available,
Right.
even to Tricia and Lauren, for privacy's sake. But if that was something that was a concern, and this is the joy of building this kind of tech in-house, is that we can make it tailored for very specific needs. And so in that sort of instance, if that was a real concern and we kept seeing over and over that we had potentially the same one or two students making comments over and over, or small amount of, the ratio is kind of crazy, we could absolutely build things that make it so when a student who hasn't given feedback loads up their course, it comes up saying, hey, can you please give feedback? It would be really important to us. And that way, anonymity is kept for the student, but also encourages those who haven't done anything yet to take part. And actually, that's kind of almost like the inverse of the delight that we were talking about earlier. It's delightful to say when people have used it, that's great, but it might also be a delight for people to know, hey, thank you for your feedback, we appreciate it. And others get hey, we haven't heard from you yet, but we would really like to.
Yeah,
In fact, we should actually think about that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, no, definitely, because I think that trust has to be there so that the students will understand that it's definitely anonymous.
Yeah.
But then if it is the automatically generated message and say, hey, we haven't heard from you. Hey, please feel free to use this tool. Oh yeah, that's really cool. Thank you.
Actually, yes.
Yeah, no, that's really cool.
From a practical point of view, from my point of view, how I currently deal with that is Moodle. So Moodle's not anonymous. And so every, before the census date, kind of in the first 2 weeks, I'll send a, hey, I've noticed that you haven't checked in yet, just checking that you're okay with study desk. Do you need an appointment with a learning advisor? And then just before the census date, because, I don't want it to affect my score. If you're not interested in this course, please unenroll. But I do those regular check-ins when they're not anonymous, but it's a really good thought that I actually hadn't kind of thought about. And I like the idea of, but I suppose one of the issues I have that comes to mind, like really the students that they'd still have to be engaged in the course, just not providing feedback.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
We could work on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, that definitely. No, this is really cool. And I look forward to hearing the wider audience usage and see how the results are going to be. But that's going to be great. We may be in touch again to see what's the next coming up. Anyway, so thank you very much, Tricia and Lauren and Alex.
Thank you.
Someone said, looking forward to reading your publication, and so do I. So this is really cool. And it's always good to have very skilled people like Alex's team working alongside, isn't it, with all the technological skills. So
they are brilliant. Brilliant.
So no, that's awesome. So thank you very much for those who have joined us today. And if any one of you would like to do a webinar, feel free to contact me. We still have a couple of slots available for the rest of the year for people to join us for a webinar or to host a webinar. Once again, thank you, Tricia, Lauren, and Alex. I look forward to hearing from you in the near future. But thank you very, very much for your time and efforts for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very much.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.